All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Student Dream TV. I'm your host, Nina Uguomo, and we are here bringing you the best money, investing, and startup tips so you can secure the bag before and after graduation. And as we continue our keynote series, where we're talking to some of the best entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders to help you secure the bag in this new normal, I'm really excited to present Shawn Wilson today. So, Shawn Wilson, he has an incredible story. This guy is a social and tech entrepreneur. He's been a pioneer of just professionalizing celebrity philanthropy for greater social impact. He has spent years in the private sector, the public sector, specifically working with so many youth across the country, but especially in Detroit, just helping them to, make money, build wealth by capitalizing on opportunities in the innovation economy. So if that's something that you want to do, keep listening. All right. So Shawn Wilson, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us here today at Student Dream TV.
Hey, excited to be here. Great to see you again. It's been a while.
I know. Well, it's great to have you. And, I briefly just introduced people to, your background and career, but I'd love for you to, just quickly introduce yourself to the Student Dream community, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Absolutely. So Shawn Wilson, I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a lifelong social entrepreneur. So I ultimately started my career in the traditional nonprofit sector, YMCA, Children Outing Association, and worked my way up in the YMCA from camp counselor to swim instructor.
Okay. Black man can swim.
Yeah, we can very well sometimes, and so worked my way up to where I was, managing a $2 million, $3 million branch by the time I was 22, 23. And then, but I didn't want to live, die, and, all in the same city. And so I decided to move to Atlanta. And that's where I really found my passion as a social entrepreneur, where I started helping high net worth social entrepreneurs themselves start their own social ventures, whether it was for-profit or nonprofit. It was something that they wanted to start to have a impact in the community. And that really led me to working with, some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment, because what we noticed, and, entrepreneurship is always about identifying the gap, right?
Right.
And what I saw is that you had a lot of celebrities who wanted to have greater impact. They didn't want to just write a check. And they wanted to start something that would leave a legacy. But the only people they're turning to was like, mama and them, their cousin, a publicist. And there was no one professionalizing it. And so that's what I saw as an opportunity, was to professionalize it by literally building a team of social impact professionals around these guys and gals, and helping them craft a mission that would be really important. So I had an opportunity to work with, everyone from D'Angelo Hall, TJ Duckett, Paul Pierce, Baron Davis, Jerry Stackhouse, and probably my most famous client was Usher. And he was probably my most famous and probably one of the most committed.
Wow.
So his organization that I helped him start just celebrated 20 years earlier this year, or towards the end of last year. And I had an opportunity to go and see the organization that we had built together, and the fact that it was still thriving was amazing. And so I was doing that, but I got approached. And after a while of doing that, that's a really intense, industry to be in. And I got approached by Ford. So I decided to step down, and got approached by Ford Fund to come to Detroit. And at first I was like, there's no way I'm going to Detroit. Like, there's nothing.
Why was
about
that?
Detroit. There was nothing about Detroit that was appealing to me at that time. But when I came to Detroit to visit with the chairman and CEO of Ford Fund, and I saw the entrepreneurs on the ground, and got to meet them and talk to them, and there was just this energy, this raw energy in Detroit, and you could tell it was going to be something special. And so I decided to take a position with Ford Fund. The other thing that really appealed to me is that I would be on the funding side. So for my whole career, I had been the guy to go after money. But I was like, what could I do if I was giving out $15 million a year, $20 million a year? How could I leverage those dollars to really help Black and brown people primarily come up? Because what I
Right.
know, and there's just research that was done, you should check it out. It was Bridgespan and Echo and Green just released a report
Okay.
that showed the that race does play a factor in funding in
Surprise,
philanthropy.
surprise.
Surprise, right? And so you have 70, it was something like 76% of CEOs of foundations were white males, and you can just do the math on everything else, right?
Right.
And I don't think people intentionally set out to not fund Black and brown social ventures, but I think it's one of them things where it's who you're comfortable with, it's what and so that was what I was kind of trying to tackle by taking that move, because I wanted to be able to fund projects like Shaka Senghor. So I don't know if you know Shaka Senghor, but
Yes.
yeah. So
But tell the
before,
audience about him,
yeah, so
please.
Shaka Senghor was a guy from Detroit. He's from Detroit, killed a man, right? So got shot. He was basically suffering from PTSD, sleeping with the gun, eating with the gun. He was so scared of getting shot again, right? He was
Man.
traumatized. And so the next time he got into a conflict, he ended up shooting and killing a man. And
Wow.
went to prison, redeemed himself, found himself, made amends with the family, came out, and he's doing some amazing work as an advocate, but also as a writer. So Oprah discovered him. He re-released his book that he wrote in prison, and it became a New York Times best-selling book. He became a best-selling author. And before Oprah discovered him, right? He was a writer, and so he had a play that he was trying to bring to market, if you will. And there
Yeah.
weren't a lot of people who would fund him, but I was able to fund him along with a handful of other individuals, and that's what I was trying to do. It wasn't a lot. It was like
Right.
$10,000. It was like $10,000. But what did that mean for him as a social entrepreneur, as a someone who was trying to get traction? And I think I think that's the power of diversity and funding, is that as a Black male, I understand that part of our narrative
Wow.
is the issues that we faced from incarceration, and I could have easily been a Shaka, and so because I have empathy,
Come
I could
on.
look past some of those other things and say, hey, this is an important narrative, because you always hear the narrative of the guy who goes to prison, but you very
Right.
rarely, and for a guy who goes to prison and he didn't commit the murder, right? And so it comes out 20 years later he didn't commit it, and yeah, everyone tells that story. But what about the guy who committed the crime, redeemed himself, and now
Right.
who's funding that story? And so that was why I took the forward position, because I wanted to have that kind of impact. We were able to build a lot of powerful movements, around economic mobility, Black male initiatives, Black female initiatives, which was amazing. I did that for 5 years. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided to come back on the other side of the table, and took the position as president and CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs of Southeastern Michigan.
Wow. And so, I mean, there's a lot there, including, I mean, you supported us. So we
Yeah.
appreciate that. Student Dream, we were
Yep.
able to do a lot of work because of your support as well. And so talk to me about why you made that shift back to the other side of the aisle.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I got approached by Boys and Girls Clubs in January, February of 2018. And
Mm-hmm.
originally I said no, because I was like, oh man, that is not my brand. Like, I'm this young innovator, entrepreneur. And when you think Boys and Girls Club, you think, you know, gym and swim, pool
Yeah.
table, that kind of stuff, right? And I was like, so yeah, that's not me. So I kind of passed on it.
Yeah.
But then I got pulled onto the train station project in Detroit. So Ford announced that we were buying a 105-year-old train station, and the goal was really to remake it into this, tech hub, this center of mobility, kind of the epicenter of innovation when it came to the automotive industry. And I was the community lead on that. And so I think that got my mind, once again, seeing a gap and got my
Seeing a
mind.
gap.
Yeah. And, the gap I saw was you have these amazing legacy organizations like Boys and Girls Club. That brand's been around for 160 years.
Yeah.
Doing some important work. And you have a lot of legacy organizations like that. But if we're honest with ourselves, right, they become legacy organizations. And then to a certain extent, they stop innovating. And that's not just for nonprofits, that's for for-profits as well. Innovative companies start off, they're very innovative, and then they stop innovating, right? And so I think what I saw was this gap or this opportunity to say, could you make the Boys and Girls Club brand more relevant? Could you make people, could you make it so that people look at it and like, wow, they're cutting edge, they're doing some amazing things, Boys and Girls Clubs. So now you're not just funding Boys and Girls Clubs because, because it's a legacy brand, but you're funding it because at the end of the day, they're an impactful brand, they're a relevant brand, they're leading innovation. And so that's what challenges, and this organization had a lot of them. It was coming out of about $2 million in debt. The culture was horrible. It was just a lot, and
lots of cleanup.
I told my wife this would be my last. Yeah, this would be like my last startup, and so that's why I decided to take the position.
That's great, man. There's so much there. Just the willingness to get your hands dirty and solve problems, knowing that they're not going to be the easiest. But one of the things that stood out as you were talking was, you mentioned going from point A to Z a lot. And a lot of times people have a goal of getting to Z, but they don't get there. And so talk to me about just the how, right? Because it's one thing to say, hey, I want to fill this gap that I see in celebrity philanthropy, or this gap that I see in, adding innovation to underserved communities. But what would you say was like the key to you executing on these things?
The key to executing is to just do it. Like, I know that sounds like really super simple, but it is. I think a lot of, and I'm sure everyone has seen this where they're like, man, I thought about that idea,
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I thought about a master class. I had thought about a concept like master class before master class, or I had thought about this, I thought about that. But the difference is you thought about it and someone else actually did it, and I think that's one of the number one things that I've learned is to think like a tech entrepreneur. Everything doesn't have to be this huge 5-year strategy on how you're going to start to do it. Sometimes it's like, hey, let's get traction. Let's do something small. Let's get traction. Let's see how it works. And then as you're getting traction, you're breaking down what worked, what didn't work. And I explain to my staff all the time, I'm like, look, there's 2 ways of develop. If you came to me and said, Shawn, I want you to develop a mobile app for me, there's 2 ways you could do it, right? Agile and waterfall method. The waterfall method is I would sit with you and go over everything you wanted that app to do from beginning to end, all the features, et cetera, et cetera. Then I would build it out, and then I would basically come to you with the first full-blown iteration of it, right? Agile is, okay, tell me everything you want it to do, and then what's the most important function?
Right.
We build out that most important function. Can we get traction on that most important function? Because if you can't, then it doesn't make sense to build out everything else, right? And then once you get traction on that first function, then it's the next function, then the next function, then the next function. And so that's how I like to do it. So anytime I'm looking at something like that with, whether it's celebrity philanthropy or taking on Boys and Girls, I'm like, you know what? We're just going to do it. And we're going to do it piece by piece by piece. And as long as your vision, you have the big vision of where you want it to be, that's fine, because that's what keeps you excited day after day.
Right.
But you got to be able to get into the weeds and just make traction.
Right. No, that's so good, man. And because I think a lot of times when I think about just the folks who are listening, especially when you haven't done something before, it can be so intimidating. And it's like, okay, I don't want to fail. I can't afford to fail, both on a time side, on a money side of things. So I need to have it all tight and all together. But doing it piecemeal, not only does it help you to accelerate faster, but it also helps you to mitigate your risks because it's less time and less money. So that's a great point that you made.
Yeah, and look, I know these things not because, you know, I'm ridiculously smart. It's
Mm-hmm.
because I've probably done it the wrong way before, right? And I'll give you an example. When I was with Usher's New Look, when I was running Usher's Foundation, we got $2 or $3 million over a number of years from Accenture to build out
Mm,
a platform for our youth, right? And I did the waterfall methodology with it, and to this day, it never took off, that platform. So we
right.
wasted millions of dollars. And the problem was because if we would have just said, hey, the most important function is getting our kids to log on and to participate when they're in class, if we would have
Right.
just focused on that versus, ooh, and then they can get badges for doing all these things. And then, they can set up their own emoji and they can do, like, we're, all over all that stuff. No, no, no. But if we can't get them on, right, then none of
Right.
that other stuff makes a difference. If you can't get them to engage physically when they're in class in person, then everything else is irrelevant. And so
Right.
starting piece by piece, we could have taken 200,000 and did that first phase, and then teed it up for greater success. So, I've blown millions of dollars because I didn't take that approach. And so, you guys get to learn from my $1 million mistakes.
Right, right. We got $1 million of mistakes to learn from right now. So with all that you've done, right, in the last, decades of working in all these spaces, let's think about just the current state of affairs, right? You're talking to the class of 2020. They just graduated last week. Some are graduating this week. And the goal that they need to do is, hey, I need to make some money. Talk to me about how they can execute that goal in the face of a lot of the challenges that they're faced with right now. What would be your career and financial advice to them?
Look for the need, look
Mm,
for the need, obviously start a business,
yeah.
and take a moment to let this moment sink in and ask yourself, what do you wish you had done better to prepare for this moment, and then start doing
Mm,
that today. And so, I always tell everyone you should have, investments in multiple businesses. And so, yes, I'm the CEO of Boys and Girls Clubs, but I'm also an investor in the Gathering Spot in Atlanta. I'm
mm,
an investor in tech ed companies. I'm an investor in, right? Because of course I don't have the time to invest in those startups, uh,
right.
but I recognize talent, and then I'll personally invest in those businesses. But when I was younger, I was the one starting all those businesses, right?
Right.
And so, you have to do that. You have to always have a side hustle, right? Is what Black folk call it, right? You have
Right.
to have that side hustle, but or you could just call it a business. You have to have a entrepreneurial business. So my advice would be, one, this probably won't be the last time something like this happens in their lifetime, even though they're just graduating. So I would say prepare now for the next time. Make
That's
sure
a
you have
fact.
multiple streams of income, because that's what all that boils down to. And make your mistakes young, right? Like, start
Yeah.
your businesses while you're young. Struggle now, fail now. I almost guarantee you that your first business won't be a success, and that's
Mm,
perfect. But make sure you learn from that business and then move on. And then the other thing I would say is, look, times are about to get real tough. So
right.
don't be bougie when it comes to the type of work, right? Whatever you need to do to make ends meet, do it, grind on it, and grind at it. Because the thing I tell people all the time is, and no matter what position I've been in life, I always strive to be the best at it. And it's
Mm,
because if you're, being the best at something leads to another best opportunity, right? But if
good.
you're average, then you get another average opportunity. Right. So it just depends on how you want to go through life, and
Ain't
then
nobody
some
got
people wonder,
time
like,
for that.
why am I not, yeah, why am I not blowing up? And yeah, I'm just working over here. like I have a younger brother, and it's funny. This was years ago, like, I don't know how many years ago, but years and years ago. And I was working at the YMCA at the time. So that's how long ago it was. And I got him a job at McDonald's. And, after like 3 weeks, he quit. Well, I got him that job at McDonald's. So I put my reputation on the line and he quit.
Right.
And I said, man, why did you quit? That made me look back. He's like, man, I'm not flipping burgers. Okay. But that McDonald's was owned by Sherman Claypool in Milwaukee, which was one of the only Black-owned McDonald's in the city. And he had a number of them, right? So if he would have done that at the best, who knows? Maybe he would have learned the business and ended up owning his own McDonald's, right? Or Sherman knew someone who was looking for someone in a different industry, and he's like, oh, you got to get with this kid. This kid is good, right? But you put forth a mediocre effort, and so that's what you got,
right?
Versus really, really grinding and being like, I'm going to be the best, and I don't care if I'm working at McDonald's for 6 months, I'm going to be the best at it.
Yeah, it's that Michael Jordan effort. I love the Last Dance. Like, he just raised the bar. And when I think about our community, and I love sports, I grew up playing basketball, and there's just a certain work ethic and mindset that we have in the sports arena that we don't always apply in other spheres. And I'm like, come on, y'all, we know how to do this. We know what it takes.
And it's all the same. And it's all the same, whether it's him or Kobe or whoever.
Right.
But it's when this hit, like, I'll give you a great example. You have to have that killer or that winning mindset. When this first hit, we have 8 Boys and Girls Club across Southeastern Michigan. And we had to close 8 clubs on March 13th. Within 4 days, that was a Friday. By Tuesday, we stood up a virtual club.
Nice.
Right? Where I'm like, you know what? Every day, 3 to 5, we're gonna offer a virtual club. Guess how many kids showed up that first day?
All of them?
Zero.
Man.
Then the next day, 7, right? Then the next day, 12, right? But now we're at 200 kids a day. Are coming on. We just did a fundraiser where we raised over $300,000 because we got Big Shawn and Ludacris and a bunch of athletes to come on, and we had over 1,000 people on the platform for that one day, right? And we raised over 300,000. Well, just back up. If you don't start the virtual club, so I made my team work through the weekend. I'm like, hey, we got to get the virtual club up on Monday, and I was pissed off because it took till Tuesday. Right. But you have to have that drive to be like, hey, we got to get this up. We have to stay relevant.
Yes.
Our mission is to serve kids. We still got to serve kids. COVID-19 or not, it doesn't matter. We have
that urgency.
And then all of the positive stuff flowed out of it. So you can check out an article that was written in NBC News on the virtual club. I just interviewed today with NPR.
Nice.
Just hit. I mean, and we raised, like I said, 300,000 when no one was raising money. If you weren't serving food,
right.
300,000. And so, but that's the point of doing something quickly, right? Not saying, well, let's take a month to plan out what our virtual platform will look like, which is what a lot of people did.
Agile.
Right. Because at the end of the day, if you can't get kids, it's all about the experience. So if you create a dope experience on that platform, kids are going to show up.
Yeah.
And parents are going to be hitting you like, hey, how do I get my child on you? Right. So
exactly.
You focus on the experience. And so, yeah, you gotta drive and you gotta be the best. So we're going to be the best in quarantine.
Come on.
Nonprofit. You know what I'm saying? We're just going to be the best.
I'm going to be right there with you, man. I'm going to be right there with you. I don't know who's going to be Jordan, who's going to be Pippen, or who's going to be Jordan, who's going to be Bryant. Maybe you got a little age on me, so I'll let you be MJ. I'll be Kobe.
Hey, but you know what? But a lot of people curl up in those positions.
Yeah.
And they just like, oh, we're going to wait and we're going to see. And then today we just opened up the club, our first club for children of essential workers. Same thing. One of the first organizations to do that.
Yeah.
Channel 4 just came out to cover it today, right? And all that stuff. Well, why? Because once again, we only had 16 kids there today.
Yeah.
But learning how to operate in this safe environment with 16 kids, now when we need to scale, I have 30 days experience on everybody else.
Come
So if
on.
a funder is looking to fund someone, or a kid or a parent is looking to put their kid somewhere, who are they going to trust? You know,
Right.
someone who's just opening the door for the first time, or someone who's been doing it for a month?